All right, this is the Legion in a nutshell. A Legion marked a strong break from the typical spear-centered warfare of the Mediterranean up into that point, the point when the Marian reforms incorporated it into the military. Instead of using a spear as the main weapon, the Roman army depended on the gladius, a short sword, for combat. Army units were composed of centuries, units of up to 100 men. 6 of these would form a cohort, and 10 of these would be used to form the whole legion, for a total of 50 to 60 centuries, 5,000 to 6,000 men. There would be squad leaders of 10 men and centurions of 100 men. Each cohort would have a leader who would report directly to the legate, who would typically be an equites, a knight. They were drawn from the plebs. The soldiers were drawn from the plebs, and before the Marian reforms, they had to own land. Although after the Marian reforms, they no longer required land holding. Typical soldier was often poor and desperate for the bonus that would come with. As I said, he would be armed with a short sword, a gladius. He'd be armed with a supply of javelins, pila, and he would be given a rectangular shield, a cuirass, and a helmet, along with other tools. He would typically carry 60 pounds for up to 20, 25, sometimes 30 miles a day, and on forced marches. As I mentioned, each unit is made up of 100 men, with 10-man squads. The centurion would be a student from among the 10 men who would be elected by his fellow citizens to hold the position of centurion. So there are 50 to 60, what we would call in modern terms, petty officers leading the legion. They would be soldiers who would fight. They would be officer soldiers who would fight with their men in the lines. They were expected to show bravery and courage and fortitude, and they would only be given rudimentary training as officers because they came from the plebs, and they were expected to be able to do their job, but mostly just to follow orders. Although the Romans had a very good system for recognizing excellence and facilitating mobilization. Roman society was made up of 3 classes. Plebs at the bottom, equites, knights, and then patricians at the top, the senators, who would run the government and military campaigns as an extension of politics. The equites would serve as the tribunes and the lower level military leaders, sometimes legates, sometimes the cohort leaders. And then the centurions, coming up from the bottom of the ranks, would be plebs, average men. They'd be expected to take their position very seriously because they were seen as a crucial link between the upper class who were trained for war and the lower class, the mob soldiers. Each cohort of 5 to 6 centuries would have one centurion who would be the best centurion in that cohort. They would have a competition every year to see which one would be the best. And then there would also be a competition, an ultimate competition, to see which of the 10 cohort leading centurions, that is, was the best of all. The best soldier, the best line man of the rank and file of 5,000 to 6,000 men would be recognized as the primus pilis, the first spear, the best soldier in the legion. He would continue to serve as a centurion for the remainder of that year, but after the year was up, he would receive an early discharge. All of the centurions were elected with the hope of extra bonus and extra loot from war, But the primus pilus would expect to be discharged at the end of his year, to be discharged early. If a typical soldier signed up for 15 to 20 years, the primus pilus could be out as soon as his year was up and be out anywhere from 5 to 10 years early. This means that there was strong competition across the legion to be elected as the leader of the 10-man squad, to be elected from there to be the leader of the centurion, and from there to be elected the best centurion in the cohort, and from there to reach the top and to be elected the leader of the legion, in the sense that you were the best rank and file soldier in the legion and you would be the primus pilus. The military was the only way for plebs to rise to equites, and it was also the only way, it was one of the few ways for an equites to rise to become a senator. This, at least in the immediate post-Marian period. This loosened up as the Republic came to an end and the empire allowed for a little bit more mobility in certain periods. But in many ways it was very taboo to marry across the ranks. A little bit less so from the equites, much less so from the equites, between the equites and the patricians, but certainly there was a great deal of taboo between the upper two classes and the plebs, who constitute the vast majority of the Roman population. And that, in a nutshell, is how the Roman regiments worked.